Hey ladies, and welcome to day one of the Esther fast. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for what God is about to do in the next 3 days. And if you don't know, my name is Rebecca Johnson and I am the founder of Raising Esther Ministries. With that all being said, let's start the video. So day one, as you can see, before there was Esther, there was a Vashti. Now, I'm not gonna lie, Vashti's story has always been quite told to me very negatively when I was growing up. But it wasn't until I got older and I read the Bible for myself, I started to see her story in a different light. Now, if you don't know, go and read Esther 1. You're gonna see her story in the first chapter. You're gonna see her story in the first chapter of Esther. Now, at this time, King Xerxes is hosting this amazing, elaborate party, and it's gone on for like 180 days plus more days, right? So he's having fun, he's drinking, him and other noblemen, other princes, everybody in the whole province is just having a great time. While that's happening, Queen Vashti is hosting her own banquet with other noble women. These are women with higher rank. Now, as she's having this time, the king's very drunk, he's merry on the wine, and he goes, you know what? Calls one of his eunuchs and said, you know what, call my wife, Queen Vashti. I want people to come and see her. Tell her to wear the crown. I want all these men, all my friends to see how beautiful she is, right? Now, while this is happening, the king calls one of his eunuchs and say, hey, call the queen to come over and I want her to stand before my other councilmen, the other princes, the other noblemen, and I want them to see her beauty. Now, what scholars may say is that he wanted her to come just wearing the crown and only the crown, if you understand what I'm saying. And so this information got back to Queen Vashti and she says, no. Well, the eunuch goes back and tells the king in front of other people. Now, he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed and he tells them, well, she says no. The king's embarrassed. The other noblemen are embarrassed and enraged as well. And so they think, what are we going to do to this queen? How dare she? How dare she say no to the king? And not only that, how dare she say it in front of other women, right? So now they set up a plan and to basically get rid of the queen. And not only that, they put in a law that every man, whether he is great or small, whatever job title he has to have respect in his home. Whatever he says is law, right? So that law was put in. The king said, you know what, this is great. And poor Queen Vashti, she was banished from the palace. Now, I remember hearing that how Vashti was how dare she was not a nice person. She had to go, she had to lose her place because she wasn't a right woman. As I was reading this story, I was like, the older me, I was like, actually, I don't see what she's done was wrong. She didn't do anything wrong, right? So here's how I see the story and here's how I believe that we can implement this story in today's life, right? So I read this story and I saw a woman with a high position of influence at a table at a banquet with other women who are looking to her as this woman of stature. All of a sudden, a man comes in and tells her, hey, your husband wants you to come and just parade in front of him and his drunk friends, right? Him and his drunk friends, and they just want to ogle at you. And she's like, no. And I believe she must have looked at the women and who are looking at her to say, like, what should I do? And she goes, no. And I'm believing that in that moment, she's probably thinking, I might lose my position in saying this, but I can't sit here as the queen with these women and then demote myself to stand and just have these men just look at me for whatever and have whatever thoughts in their minds, right? Now, how this whole story plays with influence, there's many people that are trying to have some form of influence or diminish influence. Now, I noticed that the king's noblemen and the princes around him, the councilmen, their interests or their reasons as to why they wanted to punish Vashti and to put these laws in wasn't really about the king. They were worried about the fact that if this woman, the queen, is saying no to the king, other women, you read it for yourself, other women will say, well, if Queen Vashti says no to the king, then I don't have to do whatever you say. And so they started fearing about their own position. And they thought, you know what? They feared her influence. They feared her influence over these women. And so they thought, to stop her influence, to stop that seed, to stop that fire from spreading, we have to make an example of Vashti. Now, one thing I do believe, and one thing I loved about this moment, is that Vashti thought, you know what? Even if that I'm going to lose my position, I have to make a stand. And I think it's such a courageous and a beautiful story, because I believe that, especially for women who are about to date, or who are about to go into dating, who have dated and who had like really bad relationships, and I know I'm going on a different tangent, but it gives you an idea of like how you want to be treated in a relationship. I believe that in that moment, it just didn't feel right for the king just to have, and in that moment, they were all drunk. They were all been drinking. So it was one thing if he said, hey, look, this is my beautiful wife. I want you to meet my wife sober. But he called her in the middle of them being drunk. And she has to stand there and have all these men just looking at her. And God knows what they were thinking and the reason why he wanted them to see her, as if she was like this trophy. And another thing that I noticed in this story was the influence that these men had over the king. And it had me thinking about your circle around you and how they influence your decisions and how they influence everything in your life, and whose voice are you listening to, whose voice is influencing and moving and shifting things in your life. It is crucial to pay attention, and I pray in this time of fasting and today is to listen and ask God, open my eyes and open my ears to who's around me that's influencing me negatively or positively, and help me to tune out the negativity and tune into positivity. Now, when I say the negativity, I'm not talking about when people are giving you constructive criticism and say, hey, maybe you know what, you shouldn't be doing that, blah, 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 and you don't like it, so you're thinking they're haters, they're negative. Sometimes people, the truth hurts, right? But I'm talking about when people are saying nasty, snide things that go against what God says about you. They're tearing you down. The words are like arrows. It's like knives. It's hitting you, and it's not a nice feeling. So those are the voices that you want to pay attention to. And sometimes it can be coated. It can come up, and sometimes it can come across as they're trying to help. Just like the king's councilmen. Well, we want to make sure, that the king is not embarrassed. But really, it was for their own interest. So let's pay attention to the influences, the voice that's influenced. If you have the fasting guide, head over to day 1 of the fasting guide or the Bible study, where you can start reading, reflecting on all. Vashti's story tells you that even when you're following God and you're doing the right thing, it can also come at a cost. She refused. And because she knew that these women were looking at her, she lost the position. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you in day 2. Bye-bye.